My name is Srijan, and I'm an incoming freshman at Columbia University, and I plan to major in mechanical engineering. And a bit about my background, I'm based in Kansas, so it was like a high school, public high school, based in Kansas, a pretty like normal public high school. Um, and that's kind of it. I've done a lot of I've always been interested in engineering, and that's why I chose to major in it. But yeah, that's just a bit about my background.
All right, perfect. Can you tell us a little bit more about your admissions? Did you apply? Did you get into Columbia early decision, or like was it like regular decision? And if so, like how many colleges did you have, and how did you choose Columbia?
So I applied to 18 schools in total. I applied
Mhm.
Columbia regular decision, not
Okay.
Not ED. So I applied to 18 in total. I applied to five Ivy League schools, and that was Princeton, Harvard, Columbia, Cornell, and UPenn. And then the other 13 were like just T20 schools in engineering or in STEM in general was like Carnegie Mellon, Northwestern, Stanford, MIT, I believe also UT Austin, and then a few other schools in the T20s. EA, I applied to Purdue, Michigan, UIUC. Those are like the three main ones. I applied to the rest were just
Mm-hmm.
safeties, which was my state school, and then University of Minnesota. So EA, I just applied to like the public schools that I knew I had a good chance of getting into, and then RD, I wanted to the applications that were more hard hitting, like more essays or just more stakes, I guess, or higher
Mm-hmm.
stature or rigor. Um,
Okay.
I spent more time on, which is why I delayed it to RD. Before EA, I just applied to like public schools that had EA, and then I did REA to Princeton as well. Then I got deferred and then rejected. But yeah,
Mm.
most of my schools were RD, and then a few were EA, just those public schools, and then REA to Princeton. But yeah.
Amazing. And out of those 18 schools, how many did you get into?
So in total, I got into six. So not the best odds, but I got
Very good.
accepted into yeah. I got accepted into Purdue, Michigan, UIUC, University of Minnesota, and University of Kansas. Those two were my safeties, and then Columbia. And then I got waitlisted from Cornell and Georgia Tech, and then I got
Mm-hmm.
rejected everywhere else. But yeah.
Okay. And like, when did you first consider Columbia as a possibility? Like, was it like a kind of a dream school for you, or did it become one later?
I would say initially it wasn't even on my list. Like I had a college
Mm-hmm.
list and it was like 25 schools and Columbia wasn't really on there. But as I did more research into like financial aid programs, I realized that like these Ivy League schools can have the potential to give you like almost a full ride, if not close to it, or just
Yep.
reduced tuition. So I started to add more Ivy League schools. I was initially at like just Princeton and Cornell because those were like the two top engineering schools. Then I
Mm-hmm.
added these other three because they had pretty generous like financial aid programs and
Makes sense.
just like overall with like gift aid. So then near like December, like honestly December, I added Columbia. So I hadn't even like started on the application until December because I was more focused on like the ones I already had on my list. So then December I kind of tacked on Columbia and UPenn
Mm-hmm.
and then I think also Harvard, but that was more in November. But I tacked on those three, and then just over winter break, I grinded those essays out and then just submitted it. But yeah, it was definitely more of a last minute decision. But after I did some more research, I realized that it's a good engineering school. Like
Mm-hmm.
obviously it's not like top of the top, but they have opportunities that I want to pursue. Like they have a pretty strong master's robotics program, so that's what kind of also drew me. Is like the pathway of education is a lot clearer there with like robotics and the master's education that I could get there as well. But yeah, that was it. Initially wasn't a huge like college on my list, and then as I researched it more, I found it to be a pretty good fit for me. But yeah,
Makes sense. And I mean, it turned out great for you. You got into an Ivy.
yeah.
Just here now, yeah. All right, so let's talk about your stats. I guess everyone's really interested in that as well because I get a lot of questions
Yeah.
from students. So, like, what was your GPA? Did you give any tests? What were your test scores?
So my GPA was on a 4.0 scale at my school, pretty standard. My unweighted was a 4.0, and then my weighted was a 4.77.
Okay.
And then I took the ACT, which I got a 33 composite and a 34 super score. And the
Okay.
breakdown on the super score was, I think, 36 science, 34 math, 33 reading, 33 English, 32 reading.
Okay.
So that was my breakdown on the super score. But I took the ACT and then I had that, and then my GPA was 4.0, 4.77. So
Did you take any APs or any college courses?
Yeah, so I took about 11 AP courses, maybe like
Mm-hmm.
12 or 13, but I think I only took 11 exams. On
Okay.
most of them, I got fours and fives. Like I think, do you want me to break down the AP scores, or is that
No, just
I can
the
break it down?
like. Yeah. Okay. That would be okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Freshman year I took AP Hug, I got a five, and then sophomore year I took economics, like macro and micro, as well as
Okay.
AP World. My school didn't offer like a lot of the APs were stacked in junior and senior year, which is why I tried to take as many as I could my sophomore year, which allowed me to kind of unload for my junior year. But I got a four on micro, five on macro, five on world, and then junior year I took physics one, AP physics one, AP US history, AP Lang, and AP Chem. I got a five on Chem, four on physics, five on Lang, four on A push.
Mm-hmm.
And then senior year, I took four AP classes. I only took two exams though because of like credit. And I'm still waiting on it. The scores come out tomorrow, but I took the Calc BC exam and the AP Gov exam. But yeah,
Well, good luck on them scores.
yep. Thank you
And
very much.
like a lot of people would say, like your coursework is extremely rigorous, and on top of that, you have to do ECs, you have to do test prep and everything. So, like, do you have any advice on how to manage all of this?
Yeah, I think when students ask me the idea of like how to balance like a good GPA and activities, I think it's just important to not like I think what I tell students is like don't aim for the very top GPA in your school. I just think that GPA nowadays is so hard to measure just because of like grade inflation and all these other factors. So
Mm-hmm.
what I would suggest is that GPA nowadays is still important, but there's no need to try and max it out or take the max amount of AP classes that your school offers. The goal is to find that balance between like what GPA you can achieve, whether that's a 4.6 weighted 4.7, 4.8, while like getting enough time to develop your activities like thoroughly and fully and like pursue them passionately. So it's like this trade off of time. Just you have to like I think the student, whoever it is, has to figure out what's their like time capabilities that they can put into maintaining
Okay.
a certain GPA, whether that's a number like a 4.6 or 4.7, maybe between that or maybe 4.8 even, while being able to have that time for their activities that they're doing. And also it depends on like if their activities are more summer based, then that means that you could spend a little more time on your GPA because your
Yeah.
activities in the summer, whether that's internships or research opportunities. So by also looking at the time in which your GPA, like trying to get your GPA up, and then like the time it takes to do your activities and how they correlate, then you can kind of figure out what balance works for you. Because every student has a different balance. Like no student, in my opinion, probably not many at least, have like gotten the top GPA while having the top activities. I'm sure they were like maybe top five, top 10 GPA in their class, but had amazing ECs, and that's all you really need in today's age. And test scores nowadays are starting to speak more in favor of GPA just because like grade inflation and a lot of these different factors in GPA are starting to like colleges are starting to realize that, so they're starting to weigh test scores a little bit more than GPA. I feel like at least in
Mm-hmm.
this like recent trend, which is why by having like not aiming for that top GPA, but finding the GPA that works for you, that's still really good, and then allocating the rest of that time to like the activities you want to do. I think that's the best way you can balance is finding your personal balance and trade-offs.
For sure, especially if you have like a slightly lower GPA, it's so much more important to just get like a really good test score, just so you can uh,
Yeah.
check that mark of academics. Anyways, let's move on to your ECs. Could you share like a couple of your ECs that you think were very important in you getting an admission into Columbia? And if you have any advice or strategy regarding ECs, could you also share that?
Yeah. So my main ECs were robotics. Like those were the two I would say the main ECs that like kind of encapsulated my application. So I
Mm-hmm.
did first robotics a lot in my area. Like there was a local first robotics team, and then I actually started my own robotics team at my school.
Okay.
So my EC, the first EC that I had put on my Common App was I was the co-founder, mechanical fundraising and outreach lead of my FTC team, robotics team that I started during my junior year. So like sophomore year, summer, junior year, I started that team. Um, and that had like its troubles, like starting a team is not easy. Like people, I think a lot there's like this misconception that like starting a club is weak and stuff. I wouldn't say that. I think if you can show the impact properly, it's just as impactful as
Yeah,
like potentially
I
like
think.
research or whatever other people say. I think it's like I think more like people are like do research, do this, do that. I think more. like my advice that like comes to this is like I was always told in high school, do research, do ISEF,
Yeah.
do this program, do that program because you're doing engineering so that you can get into a top school. I wasn't that interested in like top level research. I wasn't that interested in like competitions. I wanted to just do what I enjoyed, and first robotics was like the perfect outlet for that. So I just pursued that to the max. I pursued my passions to the level that I, until I literally couldn't anymore. Starting a team, spending 20, 30 hours a week, and just kind of grinding until like I found myself in a position where I didn't really want to, like, I got comfortable with like what I was doing. I wasn't like, I didn't have this like last minute concern of, oh, did I do enough? Like I got
Mm.
myself to that position. So
Mm.
I would just suggest students that online there's a lot of advice on what programs you should do, but I think you should pave your own path because there are a lot of different ways to convey a college story and
Mm-hmm.
like your application. And I don't think like just research or whatever people say online is the only way to do that. If you can pave your own path and then find a unique way to then create a really unique college story within those, like within that application, I think that can go a long way. Even if your ECs like aren't research or this or that. I mean, I just started a club, and a lot of people, online are like, starting a club's not that impactful. So I'm like, I think it is as long as you can show it properly. I think if you can convey some things properly in your activity descriptions and your essays, then people can still see the impact that you make with being a leader of a club or founding a club. So that's my advice because my first activity was literally just co-founder of a club and like leading it, which I know a lot of people are like, oh, that's not like that, I guess like that special or unique to an application.
Mm. Okay. And would you say like you had a like a niche in your application? Like you were doing a lot of stuff around robotics, or was it very scattered?
So I would say the niche that I had was that I actually had like a bit of business in the mix as well. So I actually
Mm-hmm.
did DECA and I was the president of our DECA chapter at our school. And then I also did a selective internship program here called the FKC. Basically, you go through like a rigorous interview process and then you are matched with a company to do an entrepreneurial internship. So I think my niche was the fact that I was able to, I know a lot of people say like, oh, you should have like a spike, like one thing. But for me, I kind of had two spikes. Like I had business and entrepreneurship with engineering as like my top four
Mm-hmm.
activities because I had robotics number one as my first activity, the team I founded. Then I actually did DECA as my second activity, and then I was the co-captain of my local first robotics team. It's a different team here. I was the co-captain of that team, and then I did the YEPKC internship. So I interweaved business, entrepreneurship, and engineering all together in my first four extracurriculars, which allowed me to have like two spikes instead of just one, which I think may have made my application stand out to Columbia
Mm.
itself and other schools.
Yeah, I always say like you can portray multiple spikes, but as long as you have good enough impact in all of them,
Yeah,
and a lot of students are not able to manage that, if they're like not intertwined. So if you have like multiple activities which are like in robotics and entrepreneurship at the same time, that would work. But if it's like very varied, it's usually very difficult for students to
yeah,
achieve enough impact. Like if they're starting like sophomore year or freshman year, it's usually kids
yeah,
who are like really cracked at music or sports, but they've been playing since they were like 4 or 5 years, so they can
yeah.
build on that spike. Yeah, and let's talk about your essays. So, what did you write your main essay about, and like what were your supplement strategy, and like how did you manage all of that? Like 18 schools are a lot, so I think a lot of
Yeah.
people are curious how to manage those essays.
So for my personal statement, the main essay, I wrote about a cultural tradition that I do, and I can't remember too much of it because it was a while ago. But I do recall that like I had written about the idea of like a cultural tradition that I do and how it leads to this like broader conclusion about family and friends. So I wish I can get into the details, but it was a pretty in-depth essay. But that was like the general idea of it. So I played on the idea of cultural traditions, which I think can lead to very strong essays because it shows you in a very different light versus in other parts of your application where you're just showing your stats, your essays, your technical interests. But I think using your culture or using a part of your identity in your personal essay in a very unique way is like what helped me, especially. I've went through over like 60 drafts on my personal statement. I was really, really struggling with it. Like, for example, like I started in June and I literally had like restarted over and over. And by like mid October, I still didn't really have a personal statement. So I had like 2 weeks to write a personal statement basically. So I had to fast track it quite a bit. Luckily, it only mattered for EA. It was 2 weeks until EA deadline. So that's why I think like
Mm-hmm.
some of my EA schools didn't go so well. But like after like the EA deadline, I had a little more time to polish it. But I went through a lot of drafts, and that was simply because I hadn't really figured out what the personal statement really was. Like, I thought I was trying to like show a unique part of myself, but I think what I've realized is the personal statement is to show in a unique way like what value you can bring to that, like bring to campus.
Yeah.
Whether that's in like a very, whether that's like something about your culture that has led to this realization that contributes to campus. And I had this like like theory almost is Columbia is like a bit of a divided campus, right? There's like protests, this and that, right?
Yep.
And I think my writing about the idea of relationships and family and friends, like that concept probably appeals to Columbia quite a bit,
Mm.
right? Because there's such a divided campus, which is why I think that personal statement led to a very strong like application at Columbia itself.
Mm. Makes
So
sense.
I think I didn't purposely try to do that, but I think that's kind of how it played out. That's kind of how the cards played out. Is like my personal statement kind of fit what they were looking for.
Mm.
So I think that's why I was able to like get into Columbia and then got rejected from the other Ivies just because maybe my personal statement wasn't as meaningful to them. Maybe the idea I was trying to convey, they didn't see the value of it, and that's fine, right? Like that's understandable. That's how college works. Like some people, it's like fit, right? Colleges are look for your personal statement. They are thinking about the fit that you're going to have to their campus. So at the end of the day, like the goal is to write a personal statement that applies a fit to every school that you're applying to, and that's really really hard. That's a part I didn't really figure out yet. But if you're struggling with that, then it might be worth. This is a bit of a tough strategy, but it's write a personal statement that is tailored to the school you want to get into. Maybe like if you're, for example, like if you're applying to Stanford, maybe like the idea of entrepreneurship could
Yeah.
be like a huge play in your personal statement, and that could result in like a stronger like chance of acceptance. And I'm not guaranteeing that. I'm not saying that's a formula, but I do think it does help if your personal statement aligns with the fit of the college itself. But if you can figure out a way to fit every single like metric that colleges are looking for within a student, then you'll be able to get accepted into a lot more schools. So I
Mm.
think that's like the main tip on personal statement. The last thing I also have is like please brainstorm. I think like brainstorming is super super important. People try to write the perfect essay in the first few tries. That's not going to happen. It's going to take you 10, 20, 30. For me, in my case, like about 60 tries. It could take them less. I'm not saying it should ever take that much, but initially it should be a lot of like messy writing. Like it should be a lot of like thousand word essays, grammatical errors, clarity issues. Like that should exist because that's the point of brainstorming is to figure out what works and what doesn't. And then once you kind of have an idea, then you start to develop that essay into you start to shorten the essay, you start to fix the grammatical issues, you start to fix the clarity problems. Then eventually you'll have an essay where you're like, okay, now I can make a final draft of this once I've evaluated
Mhm.
every idea that I could talk about. Because like
Makes
once I had finished my personal statement, one of the issues that I had was like I literally had thought of like 20 new ideas after I had submitted my personal statement, like 20 new things I could have written about. So had I brainstormed more initially, I think I would have finished a lot quicker and written a stronger personal statement.
I think this is amazing advice. And do you have any advice regarding, managing all the supplemental essays?
Yeah, so supplementals is pretty gets really hard to manage once you approach more than 15 schools, I would say. Depends on which ones you
Yeah.
apply to. But I think if students can figure out a general template almost for the
Mm-hmm.
why us essay, so why colleges, obviously that's pretty specific to each college, but there is generally like a template within the essay that you can follow and then you
Yeah.
can apply to every college, and then all you're really doing is just like changing the opportunities that interest you at that school and then adjusting some of the fine details. But there's generally a template you can use for each essay. And that's like, for example, in the Why Us essay, often the first paragraph is about why your major. Because it's like you want to introduce what your major is, and then you go into the why you're going to that college for that major. So you can literally use the same first paragraph. Like I basically use the same first paragraph for the why us essays on every college basically because it wasn't anything specific to a school. It was just a description of why I did mechanical engineering or like why I enjoyed it. So by having a template for each kind of essay, I was able to actually like make my process way more efficient. And then
Mm-hmm.
like there are obviously some pretty like specific essays. That's where you kind of have to like you can't again like there's just certain essays that are so specific to a college. At that point, what I would suggest to tell like what I tell students is get all the essays that are common within colleges first. Like why us? Maybe there's a separate why major essay. A lot of them also ask like something that's important part of your identity. Maybe some ask about like
Mm-hmm.
a lot of them ask about like a campus tradition you're going to do. So if you
Yeah.
can figure out like a few templates for certain supplementals that are applied to every college, finish those first, and then you get into the specific supplementals, you'll be much more prepared for the specific supplementals because of the experience that you've gained from writing all the like common essays across all the colleges. So you have to be a bit more systematic. You can't just be like, oh, one college, write it, done. One college, like I wouldn't suggest that approach. I would just suggest like find the common base essay prompts, like the common essay prompts across the colleges, get like a template figured out, and then make it super efficient by researching the school and then like filling in those opportunities.